Well, thanks everybody for coming out to September's Friday Live FM BetterForms Community Meetup. Pretty excited actually. This week we have Chris Conger, and it's kind of funny because we've had, I think, everybody from your team come out in the past, and it's always a pleasure. I'm always learning some new things because as an outfit, you guys work so well together. So we're going to get cracking right away. This month we just got a kind of a short preamble here. We talk about latest updates, and some new features that we're releasing. We have our main feature, and then we're going to have a post swag draw as well. Few FileMaker events if you're going or if you're participating that we'll be sponsoring. Rome FileMaker Week in about a week and a half or so. Sort of decided last minute that I'll go in and we're sponsoring. I think it's a pizza dinner, so we'll have a bit of a presentation, and we'll try to do some contests and some fun things while everybody's manja. Engage You is coming up in Malmo, Sweden. We will be there. We have a booth there, and so if you are in Europe and you're gonna, please do come out and see us and say hi. We also have a presentation and a demo slot time there too. I think it's like mid-afternoon or something like that. And then finally, Engage Austin, which is coming up in March of next year. We will be having a booth there. They've changed the structure of the booths this year. So last year, we're in the same building, from what I understand, but last year on floors 3 and floors 4, where were the vendor expos or the exhibits. This year, they're putting everything on the 4th floor, which I don't personally like. I'd rather actually have it split rather than have everything together, because it's not like people are really, when it was on the 3rd floor, which is where we had our booth, people were traversing that floor going, sometimes taking the stairs. We're close to the stairs, so you actually have more traffic, I think, than when we are on one end of 4 floors that have distributed rooms. But nonetheless, we'll see how that goes. We're excited to be part of that as well. One more thing too is I've mentioned in the past .fmp, which is Europe's original pause on air style free unconference conference has terminated, or they've stopped. Egbert has stopped doing that, and another consultancy from Vienna, Austria, has picked that up, and they are going to be having a continuation. I think it's called, oh my gosh, I can't believe I can't remember the name, but it's anyway, it's going to be a conference that's going to be apparently the same style and a continuation, and it's going to be in June as well. So if you're looking for an excuse to go, what's neat with these kind of events is there's a lot of the European community has sort of slightly, not grossly, but slightly different takes on, how they approach different technologies, how they think about the things, and so on. So there's a lot of cross-pollination, a lot of learning that we can definitely gather from that. All righty. I just want to mention really quick here some promotions that we have coming up, and these are available to everybody. So I'm just going to sort of flog this just a tiny bit here. We have celebrating Rome FileMaker Week. We have some promos on our citizen plan. It's about $100 off, so about 16%. Our pro plan is you save about $500 off in your first year, which is pretty significant. And that's on for $12.50. We do have some bundles as well. This is a combination of consulting and the license, and we have a small bundle and a medium-sized bundle as well. And then finally, we have just some sales on just pure consulting packages. So we have a few options for everybody there, and I hope you can take advantage of that. I'm going to flip things over to Hassan, and he's going to talk about some latest features that we just released.
All right, hey guys. Yeah, so today we'll be talking kind of about components and some of the new features I released. So I'm just going to share my screen over here. Yeah, one of the main new features that we got released to the public for everyone now is components. This uses, I just kind of threw this together real quickly, but the use essentially is anything that you reuse in the app, you can make over here and then reference it inside your page schema. So we have some documentation on it right now. We will be releasing more documentation and some videos on how to use this in the coming weeks. So please look out for that. Additionally, for the BetterForms updates, you can always find all our updates in the changelog over here. And yeah, that's essentially it. Next month, we're going to be covering more in depth on components to give you guys a better view on what's going on over here. Yeah, please, if you have any examples, save those for next month as well. I mean, any questions, or feel free to ask them now as well.
I think depending, we've had components out for actually quite a while now, but they've always sort of been behind a feature flag, behind a beta, and that's mainly because of the documentation. We had some examples, and we've used them internally. We've used it, and it's the API itself for the component is pretty stable. We're going to make a lot of major changes to the editor. It's kind of a temporary kind of UI for the editor there, so that you expect to see a lot of changes because it's not exactly themed compared to the rest of the app. It doesn't have the same continuity, but they're going to be a massive feature. And we've had some really, really good suggestions over the past little while with components as well. The ability to share them. And today, I believe Chris will be demonstrating some just different widgets and things like that in some of their apps. And taking some of those widgets, which are maybe kind of complex to build, you can already have this as a compartmentalized piece of code that's very, very reusable. One thing is it's a different concept to use a component than we're used to in FileMaker world because we don't really reuse anything. I think the closest thing that we would reuse a component for in FileMaker would be something like an add-on. So imagine add-ons, but you can customize them once you add them on, and you could also share them out to other people in the community as well. So great, thank you, Austin. All right. We're going to jump in. We're moving along pretty fast here in terms of time. I'm going to jump in. I want to introduce Chris, and I met the team from NaviCu. I think it's been about 8 years, maybe now, something like 2017, 16, maybe around 2016 or so. Yeah, it's about 8 years. And I responded to a post on Twitter. And it was Steve Winter who is probably the community's most prominent web developer for FileMaker. And he put a post that he was looking for a PHP developer to fill in while he was traveling on a long vacation. So I sent him a quick link. I said, hey, got lots of references, and I didn't hear from him. So I didn't get that gig. About 3 weeks prior to him leaving, he messaged me. We blasted through about 4 or 5 hours on these apps. Now these are apps that NaviCu had built and maintained and so on. And that was my first the first time I met Chris. I was going to DevCon at the time, and we were to meet. So we talked a little bit online. He said, "Okay, I'll meet with you." And Chris is a pretty prepared guy, I think. I don't know if I was as prepared, but we met in a hallway there outside some elevators or something like that, and he says, "Hey, Charles, how are you?" And he shakes my hand, and it's like, okay, I'm in the real world now because these guys, you can already feel the energy. And since then, I've had the opportunity to do some pair coding with the team, and our team works pretty close with NaviCu. And I can honestly say, out of all of our clients that we work with, probably the most tightest organization in terms of having their act together in terms of budgeting a project. There's not budgeting project, but planning projects, putting things together, and the ability to just get stuff done. So it's a real honor, Chris, to have you on here, and I'll flip it over to you.
Oh, Charles, thank you. Yeah, I think it was at a pause in Cleveland that we actually did that.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay.
Yeah, I think it was a pause Cleveland where we were down in the bank vaults, and no, I appreciate you having us on today. We've, like Charles said, once Charles came out with BetterForms, we have kind of really jumped all in with it. I have multiple clients, 7, 8 of our clients have a pretty extensive part of their business with BetterForms. We just feel it's an essential part of our tech stack at this point, and a huge tool in our tool belt that we use frequently. So yeah, it's huge. Today, the goal for today is just to show you some of the functionality that we've built in this e-commerce solution. Some of the techniques we use, some of the lessons that we've learned. Please interrupt any point. We're all developers. We all want to learn, and that's what I want this to be. I don't want this just to be a demo. So please jump in with anything you can. We'll love feedback as well about the UX, the techniques that we use. Did you do it a different way? From both the BetterForms and the FileMaker side, we're going to show you some of both. Our client, little background on our client, they are an early education software company. Let me share my screen here. This particular e-commerce site, they're an early education curriculum software. You can think of them as training the teachers or teach the teachers. They're the trainers of the teachers. Technically, they're home visitors, but for the purpose of today, I'll reference them as teachers. It's just a little easier to understand. But they're an awesome company. Their business has changed and evolved multiple times since we've gotten involved with them. Pre-COVID, through COVID, and then now coming out of COVID, they've really done a great job of pivoting, and BetterForms and FileMaker's flexibility has really allowed us to navigate with them through it all. We have a central FileMaker system that we've built for them that we call Great Kids Connect. And that's really kind of like the hub of the wheel. And we have all these different spokes that come off of it. The e-commerce is one of those spokes. But we have some Tableau integrations going on with them, some shipping software integrated to it, some educational delivery software called Talent LMS and Lock Lizard, Microsoft Graph, where QuickBooks is on the roadmap for them. So we have a lot of different integrations with them, and the central hub is called Great Kids Connect. But they were using Shopify. They didn't do a lot of online sales for a long time. And then they needed to just be able to sell a couple of their materials online, and they were using Shopify. And they were not pleased with just some of the stuff that they were having to deal with the Shopify. We did not have an integration built into Shopify at that point. When we were at the point of looking at the integration, we had to weigh the pros and cons of, hey, do we just build something on our own in BetterForms that we have full control over, or do we stay with Shopify? And we discussed it with them, and we ended up going with BetterForms. And at that point, we brought in Charles and his team, Andrew and Pearson, to really kind of develop a catalog for them. And I can't stress this enough. If you are going to build something that you want a high quality level, whether it's in FileMaker or the web, use UX designers. I mean, I just using a UX designer, it's a game changer for us. I look at what we did prior to us engaging UX designers and to now, and it's just night and day different. We're developers. We're just not really, at least most of us aren't very good at that stuff. We think we are, but we're not as good as we think we are. And then a UX person gets in there and totally changes the game for you. So on the website, Pearson has done the stuff I'll show you. Pearson has done the development of the UX. And then on the FileMaker side, we use Fred Illis doing our FileMaker side for this particular client. Here was V1 of the catalog. It was nice, worked exactly as they needed. At that point, they only had a handful of items in there. So it was really exactly what they needed. Someone could come in here and just add to cart. They could change the quantity, off they went. It was very functional for what they needed at the time. This was probably 18 months ago, but their business has changed recently. I guess they're looking to scale a little bit more. And so some of those changes and some of the things that they want to do business-wise was going to require us to add in some changes to the catalog. So at that point, we kind of went back and looked at the catalog as a whole and kind of realized it wasn't very easy to navigate anymore as their product offerings grew from 5 to 10 to what it is now. It just became a little bit tougher for someone to find. These categories, they're all driven by great kids. They can create and add their categories however they want. which does help. But there were still some issues on here. For instance, if they had a Spanish and an English version, you can see this is an English version, and this is the same version just as Spanish. So as they were offering more and more languages, things were going to grow. They weren't as easy to find anymore because the Spanish, they had to label it with Spanish, so they knew it was a different item. And it became more and more difficult for people to find things. And I think as we were going through that, there were also some things that they wanted to do from a business standpoint. They started wanting to have certain customers have discounts on prices. That's where it started. Then they started wanting to offer certain customers products that weren't available to everyone, which that was going to really pose a problem. We couldn't just use a discount code for something like that. And then they actually started wanting some customers not to be able to see some items, maybe just have a totally customized store for a client. So then we came back to BetterForms and really started hammering through those things. And we ended up, and this is yet to be released, probably within the next couple of weeks, we'll hopefully get it released publicly. You can see right off the bat, we still have the categories up here, which is great. But now they have the ability to filter like you'd be able to expect on a larger store, which has been fantastic. They have these tags, which are great because they can come in here and just, hey, show me the ones that are tagged for English, or show me which ones are tagged for special. And I'm going to kind of talk about these tags. Andrew, please jump in here at any point. Andrew was the developer on all this and has done an amazing job. So Andrew, jump in if you want to add some points or want to do something. But I will show you kind of how these tags work, because I think it shows some of the stuff that's going on in the background for here. So if I come in here and I go to the product section, let's just see here. Let's go this. Let's find a good product. We'll go the demo Hope at Home.
This UI, Chris, looks nice and clean.
Thank you. Yeah, this is
It
Fred.
feels like an app.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of when we build our things, we don't try to have it feel like FileMaker. I think people are used to using apps. They don't know, unless you're willing to spend a lot of time training people, we want it to feel a little bit more intuitive. So here we have the filter tags. You can see this demo Hope at Home thing only has the demo currently. If I add Spanish, and this UI here is very interesting. I don't know if I would choose this particular UI of adding and subtracting, but one of the major softwares that Great Kids uses is a thing called Talent LMS. And this is almost exclusive. It's really bizarre because they can have 10,000 people down here, and to add them to a course, this is what they use. So they were very familiar. I think if you see what customers are familiar with, try not to retrain them in any way and just use that UI that they currently use, I think is a good method. So that we kind of took it from there. So I've added Spanish in here, and I'm just going to add a new tag in here.
Chris, is the idea here that you now won't have like for example, English with a capital E and a lowercase c and an SH and all like various spellings and stuff that sort of meters what tags you're using?
Yep, exactly. So if I just do BetterForms. No, was it 2 words or 1, Charles? BetterForms, 1 word, right?
Yeah, capital F technically, but that's okay.
Okay. Yeah.
That might change in the near future.
So if I add this one in, so now we have these in here. The cool thing about what Andrew has done is, so now that's associated with this thing as part of the JSON for that object. What we are doing actually is when I first load this, it is pulling from the app model first. Then it's going out to the server and getting the new updated data. And you can see that that jumped in there after I hit reload. The demo forms the BetterForms demo tag, and it works just perfectly. And what, Andrew, if I understand what you are doing, is you are taking all these online objects, the items, going through, pulling all the tags out, and then that is what's data driving these tags here.
Yes.
So it's totally
We're
data. I'm sorry, go ahead. No,
Yeah,
go ahead.
we're basically just grabbing all the tags that are unique and then just pushing them into an array if it's unique, and then selecting it will filter out the items that you see on the catalog.
So
Yeah.
that way you don't have any dead ones then.
That's exactly it. That was exactly the reason is our customers, because we were going to be building some custom catalogs for people that may only have 2 or 3 items. We didn't want them to click on something and have it not display any items. So it's allowed us to dynamically do it. And I'll kind of do that in reverse now. If I come over.
That's kind of an interesting idea, because it's not just this, but the real takeaway, I think, is that there's certain tasks that are back-end tasks and certain things that are really front-end things. And we don't really see that segregation as much with traditional FileMaker stack because it's very intertwined. But in this case, it's a front-end's duty to display only the relevant tasks. And that probably comes up in a lot of things that we build, but I've never really thought of it that way.
Yeah, and it really, Charles, is a huge part. It's one of those lessons learned that I'm going to talk about at the end, how we're building those JSON objects and letting what the front end and JavaScript and Andrew does well, do that stuff there rather than doing it on FileMaker. I'll show some of that stuff later on, but to me, that was one of the big lessons learned versus some of the other systems that we built, was how we're building these JSON objects and passing them. Because let the front end do what it does well. And this one's a perfect example of it. And just to kind of give you an idea. So if I come in here over to the admin section and we put the tags underneath our value list thing. If I come in here and first there's no way for me to delete it right now. I can archive it, but I actually want to just delete it. So this takes me right to my tag section in that one item I was in. I'm going to delete it from there. And now you can see once it deletes, so I need something to trigger it to. Did I not delete it? Oh, I deleted the wrong one. I'm sorry. There we go. Now I have the ability to delete it. We just didn't want people to delete it, something that had tags associated with it. So now that's
that makes sense. So the tags have to be
empty.
Orphaned, right?
Yeah, orphaned, exactly. Now you'll see when I first hit refresh, this will still show up here because we're taking the initial tag list from the list of items from this grouping of items here. We're taking the initial tag list. And then what we are doing for performance, and there's another reason we had to do that later on, and we may get into it, but so we're taking the initial app, when the page loads, Andrew's just grabbing the data from the app model. Then we do a utility hook to kind of go refresh the data. The same thing that BetterForms does when you're looking at a lot of the stuff in BetterForms editor does this. It goes out and then catches any extra changes or any mods. And because this data doesn't change frequently, this is a really good use case for it. It probably is better real world than it is in demo. But like when I refresh it here, you'll see that's from the app model. And then it just updated the model from the back end and deleted it. And Charles and Andrew, I don't know if you want to talk about some of the use cases and benefits for doing it that way.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one is that if you have relatively slow changing data, and almost all data is, in fairness, except for like some kind of stock ticker feed thing, you have a better user experience because you reduce any loading states. You don't have any skeleton loaders or spinners or anything like that while you're fetching that data, and there's no pausing of the UI. The UI can instantly advance to it. Most of the time, those changes, like you said, it's an admin change. So maybe at best once a day, once a week or something like that, if even that. So you'll hardly ever see those bits change. One thing though, it can become annoying if you are sorting. And this is one of the things that we found with the editor. We do the same sort of technique with the pages list. And if you're sorting the pages by, say, last modified date, when that updates, suddenly your sort changes, right? So, and it's kind of what to be expected. I mean, FileMaker would do the same thing if you had a sorted portal, but it can be sort of jumpy in terms of the user interface if the user is expecting to come back to something and it's in the same spot.
Yep, absolutely.
Is there a reason that you wouldn't want to either use a calculated field or some other methodology to store your filter options in your database and just update that on the server so it comes out fresh?
Well, so it actually is coming from the server fresh. What you're seeing initially is what's coming from the app model. If we didn't do that,
What's local then? It's
it
stored.
is local, correct.
Gotcha.
It is local initially. That is exactly correct. It's not the time that it takes for the JavaScript to pull those tags out, you don't even see, because that part that gets done before it gets displayed. So, okay, so now this way better improvement already. You can see here we have options. So this was that prenatal that we had a Spanish and English version. Now it's all one item, not nearly as complex. They can come in here and now we show them what used to be the standard partners. They have the English and Spanish right here. They can select. You can see things change inside of here based on what, and I can just come into here. Let's get back to my FileMaker just to show you a little bit. If I come in here, back to our products and go to the prenatal. Which one am I looking at here? I'm looking at 4062. If I come in here and go to one of the catalog options, I'll take the English one. And so they have full control of each of these options as well. So now when I reload this page, when I come into standard, you can see the English says these are the items included versus the Spanish says those.
Oh,
so
that's cool.
Gives them a little bit more flexibility. Even the titles, the pricing all could change. So if the pricing was different, the pricing for this one I currently have set the same, it would show that. When I select the digital, you'll see the price is a little different. So that changes. So they have a lot of control over what's going on in here. And this is all data driven, that they have the ability to change it. This was one of the big emphasis of why we switched to this, had to redo the catalog anyways, was this digital partner, which is the standard. Everything's delivered, physical materials, everything's mailed out. They wanted to move to ability to be a digital partner where everything would come electronically. Everything would be delivered electronically through some really cool software. Some of the Lock Lizard and Talent LMS, the PDF, it's DRM PDF stuff that is really cool. Like you can't even screen share it. If I were to open up one of those PDFs on this Zoom, it doesn't even display. If you try to take a screenshot of it, it's all grayed out. It's really cool technology. You need their software to look at it, but it is really cool. So they feel very confident that it won't be an issue for it being shared. And then they have the ability to auto renewal the digital and have that be part of a subscription model. So that right there, they were thrilled with those changes. And then we started getting into talking with them about the ability to have a custom store. And that's when I think the light bulb went off for them, and for me personally too, about how powerful this is going to be for them. So currently I'm not logged in at all. I'm going to log in here. And this is where I think I've made Andrew pull his hair out about a dozen times, trying to figure out how some of these merges of the custom store and the online store are going to work, because there's so many different business rules associated with it. So right now I am logged in. My login is automatically associated with an agency called NaviCu.
Chris,
Yes.
just quick question. So you say a custom store and the public store. So the custom store, basically you can control the entire experience for that one particular person.
Correct.
Right.
For that agency, the agency I'm associated
Right,
with, and I
yeah.
can choose which people in the agency can view the custom store, or I can choose everyone in that agency can view the custom store. So we give it a lot of flexibility here in terms of what they can do. And in the custom store, and Vanessa, if I'm missing stuff, please hop in and add to it. So if I come into this custom store for this client, and this was a really big need, they're one of their biggest agencies. They have been processing everything by hand because they needed custom pricing for this agency. It's a for this agency, and this agency is a parent agency that has hundreds of agencies underneath it. It is a significant portion of revenue for them that they needed to be able to do it. So Charles, you can see right here, the custom store right now, I'm the only one that has the custom store access to it, but I could easily add Vanessa to it or anyone else. We're using that same UI that we use for tags. Like I said, I'm not overly thrilled with it, but it's easy for them to grasp because they use it every day in their other methods. But I can come in here and I can add an item, and I'll just add one of those prenatal items. We'll do this one.
And do they get special pricing as well? Like,
yeah, so
that?
they can, so I'm adding this to my custom store, and I can, right now it says it's displaying the common, but let's say for the two, I come in here and this one's the 1100 one. Let's say that they want it to only be $1,000 instead. So now when I exit out of here, you can see that this one will display custom, the custom pricing, the custom everything. These two would still be displaying the comp, but I'll change this one as well. And let's make this one $1,100. And we also did, and I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, they can have like a sale price that for like a 1 week hot sale or something that they can.
There's a ton of flexibility here.
Oh, just unbelievable.
Wow.
And so what happens here is we load for this particular custom store. We're going to load the full, what we call the common store for everyone. And we're going to load the custom store, just those 2 line items I've created. And then Andrew merges those together at the point of load to create, and they really want to make their customers feel special. And you'll see here, it jumps right to the 2 items I just created, jump to the top. It says special offer for my agency name, making them know that it's not just, I'm not putting a special offer out for everyone, it's just for these people. I can come down in the options now, and you can see it displays a different price range than what it was. And so that's an easy way for them to change the price for a customer for a particular item. So that was, they were thrilled. It gives them what the discount is, blah, blah, blah. If I select the one that doesn't get a discount, you can see it's just pulling the regular one. And then the Spanish one, we're displaying this 19% off. And just the UI, the experience, Andrew and Pearson have done an amazing job of making this function the way that they were hoping. So that was initially what we were envisioning that they needed, to be able to add different prices and do different things for when a user's logged in. Well, then we demoed it to them, and they're like, well, this particular agency has hundreds of agencies underneath it. So they didn't want to have to rebuild that custom store for every agency. So then we came up with a workflow of, I'll go back. So this one right here, this NaviCu related, let's assume that this is like the parent one, the parent agency. And you can see there's 3 custom items already built into this one. So what they decided they do, they wanted all the children agencies. They wanted to still control who had access to it at the child agency, but they wanted to be able to say, use another agency's catalog, and they would come in here, and I already had it set, but I'm going to choose this NaviCu one related and update the web. And now you'll see, rather than those 2 items that I previously saw as my custom store, they no longer really exist. I'm now pulling the custom store from that NaviCu related. Oh, I gotta go to catalog, I guess. And you can see now, you can see now that all those items that were from that other agency are there. So they only have to build the custom store once in this case, and they can pass it on to all 100 agencies by only having to do that custom store once, which that was awesome. And they love that. And they're like, well, this particular case, they don't want the prices to show. Because everything that's in the catalog, these people can purchase, and this top level agency will pay for everything. They just want them to purchase it and use the curriculum as much as possible. So then we added in this toggle that says hide prices in catalog. And normally this, as soon as they close this window, it also updates the web. They don't have to hit update web. But now you can see when it refreshes, all the prices are gone. And this is one of those cases where it doesn't demo as well as it does in the real world. In the real world, they're going to set that price off. They're not going to toggle it on and off, so people are never going to see the prices. But you can see all the prices are gone throughout the app when they're adding stuff to the cart. And they're going to the options. You can see all the prices are hidden in here where they used to be, because they don't want them to worry about prices. They want them purchasing as much as they can. So Andrew went through, we set a field in the app and the key in the app, and then they can take care of that. So then they were like, well, we have some agencies, and I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to use the current agency again. So now we just have the current agency. So it should just be, if I come back to the catalog, we should just see just those 2 items again. But we have some agencies that we just want to give them a flat discount rate across everything that's available to the public. We don't want to build one for each store. So then we added this in, and this one has a 10% discount. And now you'll see every item, and they still wanted the tag. They wanted them to know that they were getting something special. But every single option now has special offer for IP NaviCu. When I select in here, oh, I still have my prices turned. No, my prices should. Oh, hide prices in catalog. Let's turn that off and update the web. So let's go back here. Sorry, I should have recognized that right away. Okay, so now my prices are back. If I select an item, it automatically says the 10%. That's what my agency gets. So Andrew has given them all this flexibility that they can build these custom stores. And then, of course, they came back with another request. They want some customers to only see their custom store. So we're like, okay. So we give them this toggle here that says display only the custom store. And now when they come into the catalog, there's only the 2 options that we had there that they can purchase. So Andrew has done a great, and like, I think I had the Spanish one, the English one. Ooh, something we got to catch here. They should only be able to purchase 1 item there because there's 2 options, but we'll get that fixed and cleaned up. But it's given them, so if they come in here and add another custom item, let's see here, let's add. I may have just added the same item. No, okay, perfect. And let me put custom store item in here. And now I should have 2 different options in here. So they have so much flexibility in building this out for their customers. And they're thrilled. Andrew and Pearson have done a great job in terms of developing the custom store. And I will show like the checkout process and the cart, because the cart is a component. So Andrew, you can hop in if you want, or Hassan, talk about the component aspect of it. But any questions on just the customization for the custom store?
I got a couple. So your update web, you're probably going to go into this. I guess you're more or less building that catalog for them. Is that what's happening there, or?
Yeah, so when I close this, the update web, we build the custom catalog at that point, right? And it's really just, it's not one JSON object. We've done that in the past where we've cached all these JSON objects in the past in one table. In this case, we just have a table called company online assign. And then this is where the as JSON is stored for that particular item.
I see. So do you have a separate like object with the entire store, the public
Yeah.
store, if you will?
Yeah, so the common store, and we have done that in the past where we cache just that one thing. And that's kind of one of my lessons learned. I think you have to use the right tool for the right job. At this point, I don't think we would gain anything performance-wise by caching it in one. We have individual cached. We have no unstored calcs when we're pulling that. Everything is stored. And I can talk a little bit about that. So in an online item, so we have an online item table, right? And this is all the data that goes along with an online item. But what we do, because we have a front end in FileMaker, performance is really important to us on the front end too. And this is a great thing, great example of it. You can see we have an online item table. We have an online additional table, and we have an online JSON table. So there's really 3 tables. These 2 additional and JSON are one-to-one related to the online table. So for every online table, there's one online additional, and then there's one online JSON. For our purposes of optimization, we use a lot of relationship filtering. It's just something I feel is really intuitive for our users. And for instance, like in our contacts, you can see here in people, if I go search for Conger, it just found 65 out of 510,000 records. So the performance is really good. And the way that we do that is we have a person table and a person additional table. Basically, if the field shows up in this filter, if we need it in this filter, it goes in the person table.
So it's like a narrower table.
It's really narrow. Yeah, we're keeping super narrow. Any of these fields we keep in that person table. And then the person additional is all the other stuff, the billing address, the mailing address, all those other fields would sit in the person additional. And we do the same thing here with the online. So we have an online JSON. We have an online table that is not that wide. It's fairly narrow. And then we have an online additional where it's as fields get added to a table, most of the time they're going to go in the online additional. This one's probably not too wide. Yeah, it's not too wide, but as things get added, as they need different things over time, it'll get there. And then this online JSON kind of brings them together. And all we do, I can just show you.
So it's that JSON is it's referencing both tables across relationship.
That's exactly
to
it.
build a deeper object. Gotcha.
Yep. And that's exactly it. And what we always do is we always use a trigger field. So in this particular table, you can see we have one trigger that says update all, and that would update both the JSON and the kit, because anytime that this field is touched and updated, it will update everything else. Rather than updating keys, I know some people just do a replace key to itself. I just don't like ever touching keys. That's just
I feel like that does feel wrong.
Yeah, so we just hit the trigger field, and because it's the trigger field is part of the calculation, it sets those values rather than having to be unstored. Now, we do spend some time talking about, should this be an auto enter calc or a calc? So I would guess in the online option, we do have an as JSON field right directly in the online option. So I have an online item, and then I have 3 options below it, right? The Spanish, the English, the digital. The online option, we feel it's okay to put it right in here because there's nothing referenced from another field, another table. It's all local. We can have it be a stored calc rather than an unstored. So in this case, we can put it right here. For me, my rules are pretty simple. If it's a huge object, I want it in an online edition or an online JSON table because I don't want to affect the performance of finds in the front end UI. A large JSON object can really, in a table, can really slow down an object. Or if it's gonna have to be an auto enter calc that I'm gonna have to update, then I automatically put it in the additional table as well, or the JSON table as well. Because if I have to update it anyways, no sense in carrying that load. So those are kind of my two rules for when we have the JSON table. You can see we have a handful of JSON tables. So we have the online JSON table. We have an event JSON table because this was long ago. This company did a lot of event registration when we first started working with them. We have a company JSON table because those all need to be referenced and have stored calcs in them. And they're all basically the same. So if I just want to update one thing or update all, and we have different triggers for different things. And this one's a pretty simple object, but if I look at like our event JSON, and I think this way of storing it is for us has been the most performant. Let's see if
the neat thing is you're when you're fetching it, you're fetching really one record, one field out of the
Correct.
database.
That is
right.
correct.
So there's no calculations that have to be done. And this is really, this is sort of like the second line of in terms of optimizations. Like the first one is just have a smaller JSON, even if it's unstored. The next one is, like you said, or you split it into tables for this portal search. But the next line of optimization is to have that JSON just sitting there already ready to go, because it doesn't change, evolve all that quickly. If you wanted to now take this up to, say, 500 users online at any given point in time, every time they might be fetching that's 500 fetches of that big piece of JSON. So the next level of optimization that you could do, and you probably don't need it for this application, but I'll just mention it for the recording, is you basically in the app says, oh, I already have the most recent data. I don't need to fetch it anymore. And oh, I don't have the most recent data. Let me just go fetch it. So it fetches it once every half an hour, once a day, once every usage. And that is really, really scalable then when you do that, because now you can go into the thousands of users, because the user is really only fetching the data either on a time interval after some period of time when it goes stale, or when they say first login or hit that the first time.
So Charles, how do you know when the data is out of date? Just a time interval?
It's actually pretty easy.
Create a hash?
You pass a date with it, right?
Okay.
And then you send the front end, you say, is my data more than, say, 30 minutes old?
Okay.
And then if so, then I run the hook. And if not, I don't bother fetching anything else.
So it's just based on time. It's not, hey, has the data on the back end been modified?
You could do it too, you could do it that way as well. Like, so for your case, you have these organizations or companies, I guess they were. So you could say, when was the last time that this company's data was when it was modified? You could save something there, and then the front end could just fetch that number. Or when the front end loads, it could say the last date is Monday morning at 9 a.m. was the last check, and it says, well, I have last Friday's date from prior to that, so let me do the fetch. Something like that.
Yeah. Nice. Very nice. Because our data is not going to change very often. Once they create a custom store, it's going to change. It changes most during testing. After that, it's kind of a forget it and leave it type thing.
We worked on an app that had, when it first launched, it got, I don't know, 15, 20,000 users in the first 3 weeks. And there was hundreds of people on the app at a time. And, the helper file records are going off. And then it does start to burden FileMaker a bit. And this is not just a FileMaker thing. This is in any database thing. It doesn't matter what the database is. You generally throw some kind of caching effectively in front of the database. In this case, you're caching in the database, but it still deburdens FileMaker from processing the calcs quite a bit. And what we did is Andrew actually implemented a method. I think it's based on time, that one. And every 30 minutes or so, it will check. So now instead of having these hits as a user navigates around, they literally hit the database one time unless they need a detailed record. So it really, really makes a difference in terms of scalability. Like anything, though, don't optimize until you actually need it. Right.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. I see in the chat, Ashley, you asked if there were nested card modals. There are nested card modals in here. So if I come into the products, I'm in a card here, right? And then when I go new tag, this is actually another card window that opens up on top. That we use it all over. We use nested cards all over the place. I know it's kind of cringy in the web world to do stuff like that, where you have modals on modals. I think for us, for instance, like a selector, because of how this is laid out. So if I go, let's see, I know I just did, let me go back to an opportunity here. Sorry, contact. If I go to our agency and I come in here to NaviCu and I'm going to add a new custom item. This is another card in terms of a card inside of a card. The way you do that is I have my card window, right? Natively, FileMaker doesn't let you open up another card on top of a card. You open up a dial, but it will allow you when you have a card open to open up a dialog window. So we open up a dialog window off screen, 1 pixel by 1 pixel or 10 by 10, whatever the minimum is. Open it up off screen, take the measurements of where this card needs to fall, and then open up a card over that dialog. Happy to go through the logic of that at one point. If someone is interested, the key for that to work is all your layouts that are like card layouts. So our popover window. So I'll just go to that company. Because of how FileMaker does window calculations, it is important. We have just a pixel in the upper left of everything called top left. And you need that to get the layout object, because the window, this has been so long.
that's interesting.
The window, when you're in the card window opens up related only to the dialogue. It doesn't know where it is in reference to the main screen. So you need to have this on all your layouts, and then you can use some calculations to figure out, hey, I've offset my dialog window 5,000 pixels, move the card window back 5,000 pixels. But I know this was a key, and we can go through this some other time, but there is ways to open cards and cards in FileMaker. And
That's
it
cool.
really
So it acts as an
changes the
anchor.
UI. What's it?
It said so it acts as an anchor or a
It's
landmark
yeah.
or a reference or something like that.
It's a
Yeah,
reference point,
that's
yeah.
cool. Yeah.
So it's because I can't remember exactly what it ends up being. If you don't do that, you can't reference where you need it to go. So
Cool.
it's a technique for us because how we've done this, right? So all of our detail is in a card rather than on the main layout. At that point, if we couldn't open up another window or another card, it would be really tough for us. Like if I come in here to add staff, it'd be really tough not to be able to add some sort of selector on top with that. So just following up on the chat. Charles, getting back to like the building the JSON and that, I think one of my lessons learned from this. So we have one of our large clients, they have a sales rep CRM type system, and we build all these deeply nested JSON objects for each sales rep with all their clients, and then all the contracts of those clients. And it's this deeply nested object. And I think normally if I would have started this process just in my old mindset, I would have built that custom store object. I would have merged all that data together, the common store and the custom store, and put that all together and stored it in a table for each agency, each company. And I think what I learned through the process of this particular one, it's easier just to pass the common store and the custom store as two separate objects, which are super easy to, they're just get column as array. Functions, grab those two arrays, smash them together, and then let
The front end merge them.
in his wonderful JavaScript skills merge them together. So you can see the custom items are here. Let's see if I go next here. Yeah, so we have the custom items here that I send this object, and then we have the items array here. And then he's the one that merges them all together using JavaScript to kind of calculate, hey, these price offsets, to add in the tags because we know that they've been merged together. And that was a huge revelation for me. Part of me wants to go back, and we won't because of how big a scale it was, but I'd love to go back and do that. Other clients redo their front end. The front end responds great. It's the hassle of keeping up those JSON blobs when items change 4 and 5 tables away, but are needed for that deeply nested object. Going up that chain and updating everything that's needed is really cumbersome. And I think this is letting JavaScript do what it does really well was a huge lesson learned.
You know, it'd be nice if we had a feature that if something changed 3 tables to the right, the anchor table, if you will, the top table could get some event.
Yep.
Like, you know how you have that trigger, you have to manually hit that trigger, right? And we have the same kind of thing because there's a lot of related stuff like in BetterForms itself, like for example, components and all these things and pre-cache pages. And so it's a pretty deep object. Your entire site is effectively a giant JSON object underneath the hood, including your models that are just a little tiny key. I think your model's big, but there's another one, you know, outside of that world. And we basically have to manually go up and say, okay, this record over here changed. Let me go tickle that one over there. And that does take up CPU time to do that. If you're having something that is quickly changing, like in BetterForms itself, when you save something, you're going to want to see that refresh on your page, right? When you go and visit the site again to test it. So we have to update that in a reasonably timely manner. And that can, you know, there's lots of little processes, so you can, it becomes a bit cumbersome. One thing though, here's something is food for thought, is you can kind of do that, simulate what I just said. It's a little tricky, but you can use on window transaction. We have used on window transaction for a few apps. And what it's really, really neat at doing is if you do have something where the data changes live, like we have a voting app and the little votes go up and down, scroll up and down, depending on who's in the lead and stuff. And we're using messaging for that. So it's really real-time communications. So if we want to change something right in FileMaker, whether we change it programmatically, like somebody makes a like or a vote, or we just change like a number or something like that, have a quantity remaining. Let's say it was an auction. The on-window transaction picks that up and it does whatever business it needs to do over the next, say, half a second. So that's a kind of a way of around that, but it's a lot of extra. It's a, you know, you got to turn it on for everything more or less at that point.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it's one of those things that I think I need to think deeply about when I'm building these JSON objects is, do I really need to build them deep, or can I pass 2 separate objects and let JavaScript do the merge? And it's way more performant, it's way more flexible, and I think it's more bulletproof long term. I don't have to remember what that chain was to keep that in sync. And I like the idea of using on Windows transaction. We use it for a change log, but doing that is a good idea too. I like that as well. But the less I have to manage tickling other records, the better off it is, I think.
Agreed.
So I think I'm going to demo kind of the cart perspective here. Back to catalog. Let me go back in here and change this to be There we go. So I'm just going to add a couple items to the cart here. I think I already did earlier, and you can see if it's in the cart, we'll talk about the cart here in a minute. It automatically shows here that it's been purchased. So I'm going to add to the cart here. Let's go to this item. I want to make sure I get a digital partner in here. And add to cart. I'm going to go right up here to do this. And you can see this cart. So this is a component that Andrew built and with Pearson's design that allows them a total flexibility in terms of what they want to do here. They can toggle on and off auto renewal. They can clear the cart, which actually is nice for testing. And then kind of gives a total, gives discounts if there's custom items that are discounted. And we go from there on that. Anything, Andrew, you want to talk about as far as the components, or is that one for a different BetterForms live?
Might be a good one to mention in this live because we did bring up the components. It's something that we released more publicly during the recent BetterForms update. The components is very useful because you see this cart button is accessible on almost every page in this application. It's in the top header slot. The only downside is you need to make sure you're loading this component on every page that you need this to work on. And there's not like currently an easy way to just say, I want this component to be available on all my pages. So all I'll do right now is on each page, I have a small field on the bottom that just has a component rendered. And when I need to open it, this gets opened by some kind of Boolean that gets set in the app model. So as long as the Boolean is true, you see the slide open and show those values. Another thing when working with components is to make sure, especially when they're being used on multiple different pages, is to utilize the app model because that's going to hold your global data and making sure that data in your component is going to be available wherever and whatever page you're on. So it's pretty neat. This cart specifically doesn't use any libraries. It's built in HTML, but there are a lot of libraries like Shoelace, etc., that does make this kind of sliding animation drawer a bit easier to work with as well. So it depends on which you find simpler, but in this case, it does use HTML.
Andrew, are there any nested components in there? Sorry, I'm not sure if you mentioned that.
There are no
or
nested components.
it's all
only
just one at the
components right
top
now.
level.
Yep, just one top level component.
Gotcha.
So we come here and I can delete stuff, which is awesome, and do various things. Then when they
I
come
really
in,
like that widget.
yeah,
The minus and it's gone.
yeah, it's
I
really
like
nice.
that UI.
It's really nice. They come in here, they can enter their credit card info in. Just enter the standard developer one. Was nice when it was 20 before that date, so you could just keep typing in 4242. And then one of the things that they needed, one of the cool things that Andrew's built in here, they did not want someone to be able to click on the terms and conditions until they have scrolled to the end of it. So now it forces them to scroll to the end. And now at that point, they can click on there and you can see that the confirm purchase, which is read out, and they can now click on that. So it just kind of forced them. I think that was actually from their lawyers or something. They said they needed that in there. So to force someone to scroll, like I'd seen other sites that force you to open up a popover to display it first before you can do it too. I just can't remember who I just went through something with that. And so we'll go there, confirm purchase. We'll cross our fingers. I'm in the middle of totally rewriting this. I think this is another one of the good things. Andrew and I were talking about it. It's a long process right now, and it's grown over time as they've added the subscriptions and some of the other stuff that they've added in terms of all the records we're creating and modifying. So what we are going to do in the future here, and it's in the middle of the script, and so sometimes this times out, yeah, which it did. But I can show you what it would look like. But what we are in the middle of doing right now is, if I go to, give me 1 second here. So this is the order I just completed. Let me just copy this key. Piece of my work notepad. This would be what the confirmation page would look like. Switch the order ID. Oh, and then I copied something wrong in there. Anyways, there's a confirmation page that comes up. That looks something, although I deleted all these orders, so maybe this won't work. Oh, I'm getting an extra character in here from copying from my, let me put it in a notepad here. So what we are doing, oh yeah, it's copying the bullet point. So there's a confirmation page that looks something like that order doesn't exist anymore. So let me try one more thing. What we're in the middle of doing is taking this script that was running and breaking it into two parts. The first part is going to process the credit card transaction. There we go. Process the credit card transaction. At that point, it's going to, if it's successful, it will call a perform script on server, but do not wait for it to finish. And then it returns back to the front end that it was successful and the transaction completed, and we'll take them to this. While on the meantime, it's going to be building out on the perform script on server all the records that needed to be modified and updated and created for this to work. So we're kind of handing off all the processing the records as a, it's not really a separate thread, but you can think of it as a separate thread rather than I process the credit card, return right away back to the end user experience. And this worked fine before in the old version. We didn't have any issues. Wasn't something like Charles said, optimize when you need to. This is now something that we need to optimize. And I was last night was in the middle of working on it, and it's done. I need to meet with Andrew about some of the stuff that would work in here then. So
that spinning off into a separate thread is a real powerful feature. I don't know how many people use that type of stuff in their FileMaker things, but basically do the light stuff and the confirmation bits in the front thread in the either in the UI if you're using FileMaker or in BetterForms hook, and then all the heavy lifting happens behind the scenes. We use it extensively. When you save a page, there's about 5 threads, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 threads that get spun up. But they're all the threads last for, milliseconds to maybe a half a second is the longest one. But it just helps get everything done quicker because we can start to maximize the CPU at that point.
Yeah. And so our thought was if something went wrong, if something failed, we would then send an email to the end user that there was a problem processing your order. It would send a message if they're still in the app, it would send a message to them. And then it would also notify Great Kids. I mean, I don't see any issues other than something really bizarre going on because there's no record locking that could happen because it's mainly just creating new records and then updating the payment record and those things. So that was just created. So there's really not much of a chance of record locking, but just in case something would happen, we would then notify the users. And just tell them, fix it and get it done. So that's one of those things that we're working on changing. But then you can see in here now, they can come in here, they can view the order. These are the 2 items I've ordered. There's different items for the way that subscriptions work. They can download the receipt, so this must have been the first time that this receipt was created. Maybe this button somehow broke. It should have pulled it up right away. Let me see here. If I go to a different one. Quite sure what happened just there. Yeah, they came up right away. Maybe that was the download receipt is generating that receipt. I'll have to look into that. But so they have their things, but now they have this My Subscription Part 2 where they've purchased 3. They can add more licenses to it. They can invite users. They can invite administrators. The administrators are only people that already have a BetterForms account. So I could come in here and invite my daughter, and now she will get an email saying you've been invited to help manage the subscription for this service. And go from there. So that's included in there. We need to probably push back. Just looking at that, we probably need to push back a record in the administrators. So this is automatically done right away. But as I said, we got a couple more weeks here to launch, and they can manage payments and do a bunch of different things right in here. That we're in the middle of building that out as well.
Did you mention which payment gateway?
So we are currently using Stripe. They have asked us to switch over to Authorize. So Andrew is actually probably on his to-do list in the short order to switch it over to Authorize. We've used Authorize for some other clients long ago. But they would like to switch over to Authorize. So we are switching it over as they desire.
Is that a cost thing or?
Yeah, they're getting a lower percentage.
Sure.
So, and with the volume that they're doing and they anticipate doing it, it makes sense. So we will make that work. I think some of the other kind of lessons, and I know a lot of you guys are much better developers and BetterForms than I am, but really understanding the difference between $BF_app and $BF_model and how they function. I think is always important to really, we were just having a discussion internally about this the other day. The model, when I get a hook called to me, I have the model in front of me. I can modify deep down into that JSON object. I can go 2 to 3 layers deep, modify it, and then it comes back. An app, you can't. And the $BF_app is, and Charles, correct me if I'm wrong, but it is a kind of a merge that number one, I don't have access to it in FileMaker. I can't see what's said in the app. I have to push it to some way for me to get it on a utility hook first, whether it be in the options or in the model. But not only do I not have access to it, it's a top level merge. So if I had a nested JSON object, I can only change the top level object, and it's going to overwrite everything at that top level that's already in the app. And so you've got to think when you're building that app model, and that's why actually this was really good for us to separate out the custom items for the items. If I nested them all together initially, like I have done for some of our other, we could never use this app type sync model, because there were times I'd have to, if I nested all the items deep inside the custom items or vice versa, I would have to resend the entire object, not just the little bits that changed. Here now, if the custom items change, I just change this item and don't have to worry about the items. So there's some performance benefits of understanding how app works versus the model.
Yeah. So
right in everything I said there?
Yeah, very close. There's a small caveat there. What it is they both do a merge, but the difference is the app is not receiving anything in. So if you have a top level key in the app, let's say active contact or something like that, user object, and you wanted to change the user's preference color. So that's going to be user object, and they're going to have the preferences key underneath, and then preference color. If you just add that one color key into a relatively empty object into the app, it replaces that top level key. So that effectively clears out everything. It just does that top level merge. But in the model, by default, the entire model is passed in. The BF model, that is passed in to the hook. So when you change that key, you're actually returning that bigger object back out again, and you're modifying it. There's some ways, we got some new tech actually that we haven't sort of publicly released, because we like to really play with stuff for a good 6 months or even longer sometimes, just because it's a new idea and we're not even sure if it's a best practice. But it's a really interesting idea, and you'll kind of appreciate it. Basically, every object you have has a primary key. It's reasonable to say that virtually every record that you have, in that object, there's a primary key, and that primary key is globally unique. That's the key. Since it's globally unique, if you were to just send that object and didn't even tell BetterForms where that object lives, it doesn't matter. BetterForms can look through all the memory and like really quick and say, oh, here's that object here and here. They're using it in a couple of places, a list and a detail or something. And let me just update that data. And that's kind of the gist of how this tech works. You just send it the primary key and the fields that you want to update in an object. You don't even have to send the entire object, and it goes through and it finds it in anywhere in memory in the app model typically right now. And it finds that key and it just updates that one field. So it's the absolute thinnest piece of information that you could send to the front end. We've coupled that tech with on-window transaction, and you end up with basically being able to edit a field in FileMaker. And as soon as you click out of it, BetterForms updates, and it's pretty cool. So it gives you really more or less live fields. But there's some things to sort of work out. There's a couple extra scripts and stuff like that have to be in there, but it's totally doable stuff to work around that. The other option you can do as well is you can always, if you want to just update a certain thing, just pass that smaller chunk in and have a bit of code that receives it and more or less updates the right thing. But it's not as easy as using the model.
Very cool. Very cool. I think a couple things that we do when we're developing an app in BetterForms, or I guess in this particular case I'm about to talk about, we use a dev environment, a testing environment, and a production environment. I think I'm a big believer, it's really important that your files are very easily distinguishable within them. We just use custom formatting in FileMaker. So you can see this is our dev environment. When I open a record, my header is bright green. Everything shows up there. I don't worry about this color scheme because I know that's not the production. And then when I go into testing, you can see everything is orange. So if I were to come in here and do the same thing, it's orange. And then we do the production has no colors. It's actually what it should look like. And when I open it up, the header is plain and the text looks more how we desired it to look.
That's good for preventing catastrophic deletes and things.
Yeah, and just doing stupid stuff, right? Yeah. So I mean, there's times that you have to go into production and look at stuff, and knowing which one you're in, I think is really important. I don't spend much time in production or testing, but there are times when I do have to go in. I think it's really important and something really, if you start it right from the start and you have we have just a custom function that's his environment and it just looks at the host, and that's all we have a lot of custom functions that we use. I'm a big believer in custom functions. Get environment, and all it does is production. So we know right away what environment we're in, and we just do a very simple custom formatting of an object to give it that look. And that to me is really helpful. I think is really important. We do other things that we do that I think really are nice for us. And we literally just had an email from our client. We're going to have to take the store down offline for a little bit when we do this transition, because they're going to have to build what they want it to look like for a day or two. So if I go into my helper file, we do have this on all of our different environments in BetterForms, and I'm sorry I'm using an old helper file, but
that's all good. Actually, what we should do is, and Eric Luce, he used to be part of our teams with Proof Guys now, suggested, and he's the one who wrote most of the code for the UI for auto deploy, is mention that we could actually just push out updates and have a link right in the home page of the helper and says update. And if you have auto deploy into your server, it will automatically do that.
Yeah.
So that's something that we could definitely do. It doesn't change that often though.
Yeah, and the reason we haven't changed it is because I added a little bit to this. This is maintenance mode because we use auto on the back end, right? So that when we're doing auto migrations and we do them all the time, the helper file is still accessible,
Yeah.
but the business file is not. So we've just said is maintenance, and I can put in demo or better. And now, because I toggle that on, when someone hits anything in that, we intercept it before it comes. It never, nothing goes to the business file. We intercept it before on the call that goes to the business file.
Nice.
And we have the system maintenance set up right here that we can use. Extremely helpful. So we're going to build a whole maintenance page. All it does is when the call comes into the helper file, it says, is that Boolean true? If true, just redirect to this maintenance page, and then it exits out of the script and never comes to the business file. So when we're doing this transition, we're going to probably redesign this maintenance page to something be a little bit nicer. Keep telling people that V2 of the store will be coming shortly. But we think we're going to have to take it down for like a day or so, the store.
I think Hassan, that's something that we could add, whether it's there or we have to look at it for an app by app basis, because some people use the same helper file for multiple apps. But maybe we just do it for one. And also a default, we can have a system. BetterForms has the capability to have these system pages, like the error page, for example, which you could override. Incidentally, you can also trap for certain types of errors. So if you do feel that you have some process that's really lengthy in the back, our hooks used to be set to a 5-second timeout, now they're 20 seconds. And we always get people asking us for longer, but it's like there shouldn't ever be a case. There's a fundamental coding problem if it happens, and there's a couple other edge cases where it's not a problem. So you can actually trap for that error with just a small snippet of code, and redirect or do whatever you want. There's a really extensive error trapping handling that Eduardo, I think he was on the call, added into the base code about 2 years ago. And it basically allows you to pick any number of the errors, and then you can redirect or add actions and do whatever you want on those particular types of errors. So I think it's a 10.031 or something like that if you can't talk to your business file, and you could actually trap that error.
Oh,
And it would automatically go to this other page if you wanted it to.
yeah, very nice.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different things like that we've implemented, and they're in the docs. And Lynn Shu's done a great job of updating our docs. That you'll see you'll probably see almost once every 3 or 4 days, you'll see some pushes that happen in a little summary in the support channel. And she's taken a lot of the or all of the technical support documents and merged them into our main docs now as well. So they're a lot more thorough. And it does cover, there's some information that covers that stuff.
Yeah, awesome. And yeah, I just find it really helpful to, when we're doing auto migration, let them know, hey, we'll be back in an hour or whatever it is. And Paul always sets that when we're doing an auto migration. Not so much a BetterForms thing, but just one of those things I also find really helpful when developing in FileMaker. I always write at the top of every one of my scripts. So if I do like company selector, so if I come in here, I always have at the top of the script so all I have to do when I'm calling this as a subscript, I just come in here, I copy it, I paste it into the script that's calling it, and it's done.
So your documentation becomes a bit of code.
Yeah,
effectively.
yeah, exactly.
Right?
It's usable code, and I still do in some places this. I'm getting away from this some more than just, I know this is what I know I have to populate for the script to work properly.
Right.
And it's really helpful to do that. And then if it's one that I'd like to run on server, let's say update. Oh, you guys are all gonna get to see the lovely windows. So I've typed in here, for all you Windows users, you probably know that once you get a lot of scripts, the filter just sucks. So give it a minute here for it to finish. There we go. So if I go here, I just write this whole thing in here. So if not running on server, run it on server, else run it here. So just one of those tips that I was not doing initially, and we've been doing it in the last couple of years, and really speeds up performance of scripts that you're calling as subscripts over and over.
So that is running on server. It already checks if the current application name or whatever it's called is a server, and then it'll force it to run on server.
Yep.
So it basically calls itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've
This
seen,
is more.
this
is more the server catch that you're talking about there. But this is if I'm injecting it in somewhere else. Yeah, they do the same thing. But yeah.
Gotcha.
So I just copy this into the parent script and I'm done. All I have to do then is open this up and change whatever I need to change.
So in the most recent FileMaker build, it's not working. And I'm not sure about the ETS version right now, but calling from perform script on server from server as a separate thread has been a flag hidden feature for a bit. And where that's really good is, for example, if you're running a hook, the hook is running in the CWP engine, and then you need to do something that's more complex, create a PDF, which is only available in the PSOS engine or the server engine. So you jump to that, but then you want to maybe send it out to 5 people in emails, and you want to, I don't know, 5 different mechanisms, email, text message, and so on. So then you might want to spin that off into 5 threads. So you can technically do that with this feature, but apparently it's broken in this latest release. So it's not actually working again. But it would be it's a real killer feature once it makes it into the actual FileMaker proper.
You do have to be careful of it getting away from you spawning perform script on servers over and over and over. You can crash your server.
Yeah, you can do, but in fairness, I think the biggest, I don't know about you, here's the biggest thing that I see people crashing the server is basically an unterminated loop. That's probably the biggest one.
Yep.
Then the second one is some kind of action that's on some unstored search field, non-indexed field, or something like that just cranks it right down.
Yep, absolutely.
And then the last one is just delete all records. That one seems to always be, I don't know, it's just seems to bog everything down. Like even emptying the helper file. We've experimented with different techniques for just emptying it out without burdening. And the one that interferes the least is to delete one record at a time and add a little bit of pause for the rest of the threads to run. And that one kind of is okay, but it's not perfect either.
Yeah, this is Charles. This is from you, the kill switch. So if I do have a loop, I'll often throw this subscript in at the top of the loop. I just this is just my thing. I copy this little thing into the top of the loop. As long as there's nothing enabled in here, it doesn't. I'm not sure if it doesn't go to it, Charles. I know you said
well, if you're single stepping it, it doesn't show it. Let's say that it obviously has to load it up to not go in there.
Correct.
But it's not a burden, at least anyway, visually.
And so I can either just halt the script in general, and I usually, because I don't want to affect someone else's running through a loop, I'll usually use, if I see that someone on server triggered something, I'll usually put the script name in here and then the account name, and only that person will have this halt it. Everyone else will just skip over it, and then I'll disable it again. But we do use the kill switch loop if needed. Haven't had to use it very often, luckily, but we have 3 different conditions to kill. This one's basically anything with that script, just kill it.
I've seen something pretty neat. Dan Smith, what he did is he passes some information when he calls the script. You know how you do a perform script to your kill switch, but even though there's nothing in here, he'll pass in some environmental stuff as to like the script name. that's
Yep.
calling, so that if he does kill it, he knows which script called it.
Yep. And that's what I'm doing too. I'm
Oh,
passing
okay. Sorry. Yeah.
passing the script name, and you
Perfect.
know the account, right? So I'm using the account of the person, the script name, and
Right.
between those two, I have these three options. I can anyone with that script name kill it. If anything with that account or the script name and the account halt it. So it gives me three different options.
Cool. Yeah. The other one I saw was counting. Now, I don't know if you can always do this, but if you're in a loop and you say, okay, I don't have any loops that are more than 1,000 times or something
Sure.
like that. But that seems like a self-healing thing, which also means it's still going to be stay sick every time.
Yep.
You know, it's a more of a watchdog.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all I really had. I mean, I can show you other stuff but that's all for the e-commerce site.
Looks pretty cool. Super, really nice UI and functionality both on the FileMaker side and the BetterForms side. So it's pretty cool to see that. I think there's a lot of little snippets that and ideas that we can reference that people could use from today's talk.
Andrew and Pearson did a great job on the design and the UX and the building. It's just so powerful for them to do it.
Awesome. Well, Chris, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. If anybody's watching this and this for the recording as well, if they want to get a hold of NaviCu.
Yeah, they can just reach out. Our website is just NaviCu now.com. And we'd love to help anyone out, but yeah, they can reach out to NaviCuNow.com.
All right, super. Great, awesome, thank you. Just open up any other questions and things like that. Do we miss anything from the Slack? Ashley asked, are there drawer examples in examples and demos? There are some drawers that are made with the card modal. As far as examples with a pure HTML one, like a component, we don't have any of those, but that would be a great example that we could throw into our components talk. Next month, we're going to be digging all into components. And thank you, Paul and Chris and Vanessa for being big supporters and building some really awesome stuff. We're going to open up our swag draw just quick. I got this here, and let me just do this really fast. All righty. Jason, are you there? It's funny because Jason won last month. He hasn't won in like 3 years that he wins twice in a row.
You can pick some.
Tell you what, we got some new swag for you, but I don't have any. And when I just met with Jason for lunch the other day and delivered his stuff there. So we'll hook you up with something. We've got some new items for you coming in about 3 weeks or so.
Okay.
All righty. Okay. Awesome. Don't forget, guys. Don't forget our promos that we have coming up or on right now. They'll be on for another 3 weeks or so as well. Right. Once again, have a great week, and we'll talk to everybody soon. Cheers.
Okay.